They are the largest creatures on Earth, creatures of mystery, masters of a dark and shadowed world human eyes have seldom seen. One of the rarest and most awesome experiences in nature is this, an encounter with the living whale. More than 40 million years ago, early ancestors of modern whales adapted to the deep. They have flourished here, but retain a fateful dependence on the sunlit world above. Like man, they are mammals, warm-blooded creatures who must breathe to live. One thing about whales is not a mystery. We know precisely how many of them die. As for the rest, we have barely glimpsed this most extravagant and spectacular animal of all. Led by pioneering scientists, man and whale today are slowly drawing closer. And in these first tentative contacts, a tantalizing question rises. What does a whale do with the largest brain on Earth? Encouraged by experience with whales in captivity, the first explorers now seek the animals in their own environment. Join us now as we enter the domain of giants, the secret world of the great whales. In an age of environmental alarm, the 1970s may well be remembered as the time of the whale. Surging interest and concern for whales have created such odd spectacles as this, a 50-foot sculpture of a fin whale placed on display in a San Francisco park. The intent of the artist? To create a sympathetic bond between man and whale. For the fate of the world's largest animal lies in human hands. And to understand that the whale is in peril, one must first appreciate that such a colossal and unlikely creature exists at all. The whale has always cast an unusual shadow in the human consciousness. There is, first of all, sheer amazement that living flesh can assume such scale. Often the whale has been seen as an agent of supernatural powers. But above all, the whale has evoked man's cunning and ferocity. We have pursued the Leviathan relentlessly over hundreds of years. The scene is centuries old. A stranded whale, dead or dying, and men at work with knives and axes. In the earliest accounts and legends, the whale was feared, the animal that swallowed Jonah and only released him at God's command. At first, man had little power over whales. When a carcass drifted ashore, there was feast and celebration. but to hunt such a creature in the open sea was all but inconceivable. Then, a man first took the life of a whale and survived to boast of it. A new and romantic hero was born, the whaler. First in European and Asian waters, then spreading to the remotest seas, the pursuit of whales promised wealth and spawned adventure. By the mid-1800s, Americans of New England dominated whaling. Their land was thin and rocky, but the oceans were rich in whale flesh and whale oil. It was a brutal and risky life. Often it was difficult to say whether whales or men were in greater danger. Small boats were sometimes dragged for miles, an ordeal whalers whimsically called a Nantucket sleigh ride. Whaling out of New England in wooden ships continued into the early 1900s when these films were taken. But by then, a new era of whaling had dawned, a time of steam and steel. The hand-thrown harpoon had given way to a deadly cannon with an explosive warhead. With the range and speed of modern ships, whalers could easily penetrate polar seas where great whales mass in large numbers. Whalers learned how to inflate whale carcasses with compressed air to keep them afloat. It was a crucial discovery. Many whale species that would otherwise sink and be lost when killed now were fair game. By dissecting harvested whales, scientists had confirmed a surprising fact. The whale's anatomy left no doubt that their prehistoric ancestors were land animals with 4 legs. Although whales bear a superficial resemblance to fish, under the skin, they are more closely related to animals like camels, sheep, or elephants. But what was the natural behavior of these monsters? One fearful impression lingered, popularized in the pages of an immortal novel, Moby Dick.
Can whales do that?
Why, bless me, whales can do anything. A whale can jump up like an earthquake and come down on you like a mountain that's somehow put to sea. A whale can stave in the ribs of the biggest ships, swallow whole crews, pick its teeth with the oars. Mind, lad, if God ever wanted to be a fish, he'd be a whale. Believe that, he'd be a whale.
Melville's whale was an angry white ghost of terror and destruction. This, for millions, would remain an overwhelming impression. Not until recent years has another and more realistic portrait of the whale become popular. The training in captivity of smaller whales and dolphins has done much to temper the frightening legacy of Moby Dick. To the delight of millions, these sea mammals have proved to be responsive and spectacular entertainment. some whales seem familiar in captivity, we have only vague ideas of their life in the wild. Killer whales, for instance, are highly social animals, roaming the seas in groups called pods. They are predators, hunting fish and sea mammals, including other whales. On the tail of a larger gray whale, tooth marks probably testify to a killer whale attack. Like most of the great whales, grays have no teeth. Their mouths are lined with baleen, a kind of strainer which traps the minute sea organisms on which they feed. The sperm whale is the only great whale with teeth, and it possesses the largest brain of any animal. Moby Dick was a sperm whale, and the species has been widely hunted for its huge yield of oil and spermaceti, a prized ingredient of cosmetics. Man is dwarfed even by a small whale like the killer, which may attain 30 feet. The smaller great whales, like the humpback, are commonly 45 feet long and weigh more than 35 tons. Sperm whales are larger still, growing to 60 feet and more. And the blue whale dwarfs all other animals. Larger than any of the dinosaurs, it can attain a weight of 196 tons. Its massive body may span 100 feet, about the size of a jetliner seating more than 100 passengers. In laboratories and oceanariums around the world, experience with captive whales may eventually provide some insights into whale behavior in the wild. Killer whales at Marineland in California recently attracted worldwide attention. The news spread swiftly. Corky, a 20-foot female, was giving birth. Captured as it happened by amateur cameras, this is the first birth of a live killer whale ever photographed. Within seconds, the baby must take its first vital breath of air. There is jubilation among the Marineland staff. The parent whales, Orky and Corky, are longtime residents of the park. It's like celebrating the parenthood of close friends.
Here's to the baby.
To me.
All right, here. Hey, here's to the next baby.
The stadium tank is closed to the public so that the new calf will be undisturbed during its first days. The sounds made by the calf and his parents are carefully noted. Killer whales use clicking sounds to navigate underwater, and their various calls may be a sophisticated form of communication. Scientists are eager to see how the calf's vocabulary develops.
I think we just got some time. More time than the dolphin, like the feeling that I have.
But something appears to be wrong. The baby does not nurse immediately. No one can say whether this is normal behavior or not.
Because like this morning when I was watching it, it was doing, when it was in the middle of the tank, I saw it obviously playing with its, discovering its sonar. It was just moving its head back and forth. And
It seems to be not terribly excited or embarrassed. So when it gets hungry, it'll probably start looking around.
You see, it's such a simple thing for the baby just to turn around and go to the nipple, and it doesn't.
Anxious days pass, and the calf still has not fed. The mother is watchful and attentive, but often the calf seems oblivious of her and the requirements for his survival. An around-the-clock vigil continues as observers seek the causes of his disturbing behavior.
Little calf is driving us nuts with its apparent improvements, and then particularly in the mornings, and then resuming back to the stereotype swimming mode that doesn't show any encouragement at all. It makes making a definitive decision as to how to handle the animal a very difficult one, because of course the the best way to do it is the natural way, but we feel we're running out of time.
Soon after, the decision is taken to intervene and attempt to save the calf. As the parent whales are distracted, the calf will be given an injection of an appetite stimulant. It's a tense moment. Though these killer whales are normally gentle, they could react violently when the calf is seized.
Now, keep his head up and very gently ease him forward. Ease him forward. Ease him forward. And you go forward a little. Further. 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 Ready? Yeah.
I think she's getting mad.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Let him go. How do we do?
Okay.
We were anxious to note the behavior of the calf as it was undergoing restraint. And I think as you saw, there wasn't much of a response. And this has been, of course, our concern all along with this calf, that it hasn't been a particularly responsive individual to the mother, to external stimuli, to anything. So quite concerned about that.
Despite repeated attempts to help, the calf does not nurse and steadily loses weight. He continues to circle the tank, scraping his head against the concrete wall.
Our night engineer called me and said that the calf wasn't doing well. I came on in and the calf was up next to the wall, and I knew it was in trouble. It was difficult to say how much trouble. So we just stayed with it, or I did for a while, and then the calf slowly sank. Corky attempted to get it to the surface and didn't make it, and the calf didn't show really any response to want to come to the surface, and that was the end.
The loss of the calf is keenly felt. He probably suffered brain damage during labor and may have been doomed from the beginning. There's hope that Corky will someday bear another calf successfully. But now, for men and whales at Marineland, there is a period of grieving. In death, as in life, whales often defy human understanding. Mysterious stranding sometimes result in the death of 100 whales or more. Despite extensive research, we still cannot explain what drives these whales to such a sad and apparently pointless end. In July of 1976, an especially puzzling stranding was recorded on film in Florida. 30 Sudorka whales came into shallow water. They seemed in good health, but would certainly die from overheating by the sun if they remained here long. Their chorus of strange sounds could be heard up to 50 feet away. The whales showed little fear of humans and calmly allowed well-wishers to wet their backs and apply lotion to minor sores. Most of the time, the whales were afloat and perfectly free to save themselves. As one observer noted, they seemed placidly bent on self-destruction. Finally, on the third day, one whale died. He was a large male and may have been a leader of the pod. Soon after, the remaining whales seemed more willing to move, and a concerted effort was made to drive them out to sea. Though at first reluctant, the whales made their way to safety. Did this pod of whales follow their ailing leader ashore and remain with him until they knew that he was beyond help? Scientists refuse to describe whale behavior in such human terms, but many laymen who witness such incidents become convinced that whales have emotional ties and a social order rivaling our own. At a U.S. naval base in Hawaii, a whale named Morgan has demonstrated that trained whales can be far more than acrobats and clowns. Morgan has gone to sea, accompanying a Navy vessel, but swimming free and on his own. Morgan is a pilot whale, and small by whale standards, 13 feet long and 1,200 pounds. Holding this special device in his mouth, he has been trained to retrieve dummy torpedoes from the ocean bottom. Morgan can plummet to 1,500 feet and more, deeper and much faster than any human diver. Relying on his biological sonar, he can navigate in total darkness, and he also can adjust readily to changes of pressure underwater. Unerringly, he homes in on an acoustic signal transmitted from the target. The possibilities of cooperation between man and whale in the sea are largely unexplored and seem full of promise. But fears that military research could lead to the use of whales and dolphins on suicide missions in combat have obscured the success of experiments like this one. And the great whales, whose physical strength could be matched by singular mental powers, remain far beyond our reach, mysterious denizens of the open seas. Here at SeaWorld in San Diego lived the only great whale ever to be studied in captivity for any length of time. Captured as a baby, she was a 2-ton infant gray whale named Gigi. She did well in captivity and provided a unique opportunity for intimate and sustained study. Sue Bailey, once an employee of the park, remembers.
She was a very gentle animal for being as large as she was. She's the only animal I've ever worked with that you could visibly go in the morning and see that she had grown bigger. And towards the end, she was gaining about a ½ an inch in length every day and about 100 pounds a day. And she was noticeably larger every day you worked with her. One way that we could see this is that she was growing so fast that she was shedding an entire layer of skin every day. And you just scratch her down and her skin would just peel off in sheets. She was growing so fast.
Gigi developed strong attachments to some of the people around her. Sue was one favorite. Gigi would make a variety of eerie but apparently happy noises whenever Sue was near. Gigi quickly learned to respond to simple signals. A series of pats on her colossal back announced mealtime. Due to the flexible baleen lining her mouth, she could be safely hand-fed. Gigi grew to 27 feet and 7 tons, outgrowing her tank and eating almost a ton of squid a day. It was obvious she should now be set free.
The best day I had with her was the day right before I let her go. I spent about 6 hours in the water with her, and she was more affectionate, really, than she ever had been, and was more interested in playing, and I thought a lot about missing her. She became a very large part of my life for that year.
Early one morning, in March of 1972, Gigi is returned to the ocean wilderness. To Sue, Gigi seemed nervous and frightened. Sue and Gigi's other keepers wondered how she would react to finding herself suddenly unconfined and on her own. A radio transmitter was fitted to Gigi's back. For a few weeks after her release, its signals would allow her to be followed at sea. Gigi's year-long captivity set a number of records. She is the largest live animal ever transported by man. Probably, she is the only great whale to fall into human hands and be released unharmed. And she is the only great whale, too, that humans have known intimately and come to love.
Well, when we first let her go, they put the stretcher out over the water and lowered it down. And when she finally swam out of the stretcher, she found herself being a little lost out there, I'm afraid. I was pretty shook up and doing a lot of crying that day. I'd been involved with nothing but the gray whale. And then she was gone and had to take a while to get involved in something else.
After her release, Gigi lingered a while along the California coast and then moved slowly north. Within 2 months, Gigi had joined other gray whales making their annual journey to Arctic waters, the longest known migration of any mammal. Gigi readapted to the wild, but of her ways and wanderings in the open sea, we know little. With all the great whales, she is shrouded in mystery. We have established that whales inhabit all the great oceans, and that some species migrate to polar waters in summertime when the food supply is abundant. Oddly, whales of the northern and southern hemispheres rarely, if ever, meet. Due to the opposite seasons in the north and south, one group is always heading for its polar feeding grounds, just as the other is arriving in tropical waters to breed. And it is mainly in these warm water breeding grounds that scientists have been able to observe natural whale behavior. Waters around the island of Maui in Hawaii are one breeding ground of humpback whales. The nearby town of Lahaina was once a major port for reprovisioning Yankee whalers in the mid-1800s. Everywhere in Lahaina, there are reminders of the early whalers and their quarries. In an age when some whales could face extinction, whaling nostalgia can have ominous overtones. A new consciousness is growing, a concern more for the whale's future than the whaler's past. Until recent years, the presence of humpback whales near Maui in wintertime was largely ignored by scientists and conservationists. A pioneer in local whale research and conservation, Jim Hudnall, was among the first to become interested in the humpback. For the past several winters, he has spent long days at sea watching for telltale blows.
Blow.
Oh, right there.
Straight there, right.
Okay.
Oh, I just saw a breach off Lanai, so I'm more whales to arrive.
The sight of whales triggers a well-drilled routine. Hudnall and his assistant check camera and diving gear. Before the whales reappear, Hudnall will be in the water with them.
Okay, I'll turn the light meter to on.
More than any man, Hudnall has succeeded in getting close to the humpbacks and filming what he has seen. He prefers to dive alone in search of whales. He has found them to be highly aware of the human presence.
When I go into the water, I try to do it quietly. And then I just try to blend in with the sea and become another one of the sea's mammals. And I hope then that they will become curious about my presence and come in for a closer look.
Even when the humpbacks cannot be seen, a chorus of their strange songs can often be heard underwater with the naked ear. It's a haunting experience, which suggests that many sailors' superstitions and ghost stories were inspired by whale songs resounding through the hulls of ships. never forgotten his first close-up encounter. Eye to eye with a creature 400 times his size, in the whale's element, and completely in his power.
All sorts of things go through a person's imagination when you're that close to a whale, especially when it's the first time. And I was just very impressed with the look in that whale's eye. I'll never forget it.
These moments with whales often provoke almost mystical emotions that transcend fear. The sensation is truly overwhelming. A humpback looms overhead like a gigantic cloud, while the songs well in the deep like a concerto from some distant alien world.
No fear. I've never felt fear near a whale, and I really can't explain that. They are very big, and they do have very powerful flukes. But all of my experience has indicated that they're very rational creatures and very slow to anger. If you don't do anything hostile towards the whale will, I think, never do anything hostile towards the man. And this, in the light of all of the killing that we've done on them, it's incredible that they should still be so open towards us.
Right overhead, just looking straight up at them. That was incredible. They were just hanging down there. And I dropped in.
Film and photographs of these extraordinary underwater encounters have drawn many others to the waters near Maui. The humpbacks here are uniquely accessible to scientists. From research vessels, the whales may often be tracked over periods of many hours.
Frank?
Doctors Ed Schallenberger and Roger Payne observe a traveling pod.
Remember, there's 5 whales there, so we got a lot more coming up.
It has been estimated that 250 to 500 humpbacks winter in Hawaiian waters. They begin to arrive in November and depart in spring. No one knows exactly where these whales spend the rest of the year. Eventually, identification of individual whales seen here and in northern waters may settle this perplexing question.
We're sailing right into the exhaling breath here. I just got a face full of it a moment ago.
Meager surface observations like this have had to satisfy students of whale behavior for years. But a new and keenly exciting era is beginning for scientists like Roger Payne. They are beginning to enter the world of the whale and appreciate its astonishing beauty.
So we slipped into the water and swam down and suddenly out of the sort of misty gloom which always surrounds you whenever you're swimming appeared the largest thing I'd ever seen. It was like sort of going out in your backyard and finding a dinosaur or something like that. It was just as incredible. Swam past, and the first thing I remember thinking, which is a thought that nobody can get away from in these animals, is their extraordinary grace. It was the most graceful thing I'd ever seen in my life. An animal that weighs 50 tons moving with a lightness of motion and a delicacy which is not achieved by any other thing that I've seen.
After blowing, a humpback dives. It may remain below for more than 25 minutes. Humpbacks are perhaps the most vocal whales. Their songs are very long, up to half an hour. All the whales sing the same song each season, repeating it time after time. Although the songs appear to be associated with the breeding season, we are only beginning to learn how the whales behave while singing and whether one or both sexes sing. This humpback is among the first to be filmed in the act of singing. When the whale became aware of the approaching diver, the song abruptly stopped. Then the giant swung around to get a close-up look at Hudnall and his camera. Turning away, the whale revealed the genital slit near his tail, proving that this singer, at least, is a male. In time, we may finally piece together enough observations to understand why humpbacks sing, one of the most remarkable sounds in nature. Dwarfed by his companion, Jim Hudnall swims with the whale. Gradually, he's coming to know individual humpbacks, and some of them seem to know him. Hudnall has come to regard this whale as a friend and named him Notchy for the deep scar on his back. The old wound could be the result of a collision with a ship or a narrow escape from whalers. Humpbacks have been totally protected from whaling since 1972, but before that, they were slaughtered in huge numbers. If, as Hudnall suspects, Notchy is old enough to have known whaling, his patient and benign disposition seems all the more remarkable and touching. Notchy lazes near the surface for a moment, and then moves off with a spectacular display of effortless power. Late in April, Notchy posed for the cameras for the last time in this winter season. He then disappeared, probably heading for unknown Arctic feeding grounds, bearing 1,000 secrets with him. A humpback calf lingers near the surface. Great whales normally bear only one calf at a time every 2 or 3 years. The survival of great whale species depends not only on the number of offspring, but on the intensive care and protection given by the mother. By spring, the young calf must be strong enough for the long swim north. It stays close to its mother during these first and most vulnerable months of life. A mother and calf are frequently escorted by another whale, often swimming below them. Investigating a diver, a mother guards her calf by interposing her body. Her pectoral fins pass close to diver and camera, but never touch them. Even in such close quarters, humpbacks show great restraint, as if aware that they are in total control of the situation. Finally, a thrust of the mother's fluke seems to signal that this encounter will now end. A release of air in massive quantities from the blowhole and mouth may also be a protective response on the part of the escort whale. The explosion of bubbles could be intended to frighten or confuse predators. Both sharks and killer whales have been known to prey on humpback calves. As observed so far, the behavior of humpbacks is intriguing to those who suspect that the animal may be highly intelligent. Certainly, they are superbly adapted to their natural environment. But there are new dangers in the sea for which the whales may be ill prepared. Maalaya Bay on the west coast of Maui is one area where humpback mothers and calves congregate. A volunteer watch has been mounted on a hill above the bay to monitor and chart whale movements. It's a labor of love for the young students who run the lonely station.
Okay, reading on whales at 91 degrees, 36 minutes, 3 degrees, 35 minutes. It looks like they're headed towards on the other side of the bay.
Entering the bay at speeds up to 40 knots, inter-island hydrofoils pose a serious threat of collision with whales. There have already been a number of close calls. The hydrofoil is far faster than any boat whales are used to, and a special danger to calves that tend to linger near the surface.
This is Cetus, Kamehameha, over.
KKD 3395, Unit 3. On that, Jody.
Yeah, Kamehameha, there's 2 pods of whales in your path. One bearing 98 degrees, 05 minutes, range 1,670 yards. The second group bears 214 degrees, 16 minutes.
Bearing 112 and 700 yards.
Understand, 120, 2,000 yards. We are plotting, thank you. KKD 3395, roger that, thank you. And we're maneuvering to avoid. Right. Coming hard left. Clearing him by at least 400 yards.
Kamehameha, this is Cetus, over. You're definitely past them, over.
Mahalo.
Okay, thanks a lot, Big Daddy. Appreciate it very much. This is Cetus, over. Clear and standing by.
The people of Hawaii are determined to protect their whales, but commercial and pleasure craft may crowd the humpbacks further. Eventually, the bay may become part of a proposed U.S. whale sanctuary and be subject to strict controls. The young humpback is the hope of a ravaged species. More than 100,000 of his kind once roamed the seas. Now, there are perhaps 5,000. The reason for the decline is clear. As some men work to protect whales, others continue to kill them. With the momentum of centuries, despite steadily declining whale populations, the hunt goes on. Only 2 nations now continue open ocean whaling on an industrial scale, Japan and the Soviet Union. 5 species of great whales are so depleted they are totally protected by international agreement. Quotas and size limits have been imposed, but whalers still take females, and 50% of them carry the essence of their species, the unborn calves. With growing awareness of the whale's unique and extraordinary qualities, protest has become highly emotional. The destruction of whales for use in animal feed, cosmetics, and fertilizer provokes widespread anger. As one author has remarked with keen irony, nothing is wasted but the whale itself. In recent years, a Canadian-based conservation group called Greenpeace has taken the crusade against whaling to sea. The Greenpeace protesters see whaling as a symbol of a wider environmental crisis. Their leader, Bob Hunter.
And the thing about the whale, the sense about the whale, is it really is the strongest, most powerful image or reality of the whole world. You get a sense that when you're close to a whale, you're somehow in touch with the world. And then after you've seen them being torn apart and blasted with harpoons and so on and so forth, you have this distinct feeling that what's happening there is there's man and his technology, and they're blasting away right at the heart of the whole life system of the world. And this is sort of like the biggest crime of the lot. It's simply physically, it's the biggest crime.
I have a
With the location of a Soviet whaling fleet in the Pacific, a unique confrontation begins. For the Greenpeace crew, this is the culmination of more than a year's fundraising and preparation.
After 2 months at sea, you wake up one morning and there on the horizon are these harpoon boats and a factory ship all laid out like a set in a movie, and we were so relieved they finally found them. And the general feeling was as if we were the Indians swarming down out of the hills and we finally had them surrounded. So there was that kind of high excitement. And the next thing we knew, we saw one of the whales lying in the water, and it turned out to be a very small whale, and then the emotional part started happening. And at that point then, everybody was so disgusted, and you know, we hadn't prepared ourselves for the fact that the whales would be so small. I think that's what really amazed us, and it was so clear right off the bat that what they were doing was taking the equivalent of teenage whales, and there were no big ones left around.
What do you say, Paul? How long do you think it is?
1975. Greenpeace measures a small sperm whale the Soviets have taken, while a catcher boat from the fleet bears down on it.
Hey, watch yourselves! Watch yourselves!
Threatening the protesters with a fire hose, the whalers reclaim their prize. Whatever the size of this whale, the average size of whales taken is on the decline. Presumably, few have escaped whalers to attain great size in old age. The protest begins in earnest. Small outboard motorboats race to challenge a 10-ship Soviet fleet. It's assumed the whalers will hold their fire rather than risk hitting the protesters. But to be effective, the boat crews must place themselves directly between the looming harpoon guns and the fleeing whales. A Soviet catcher boat is in hot pursuit of sperm whales. Bob Hunter and a companion man a motorboat just ahead. And the whales surface just ahead of them. For a fleeting moment, it seems the protest is succeeding. And then a harpoon is fired. The harpoon narrowly misses the protesters, strikes a whale, explodes. The moment has been fatal for the whale, and very nearly for Hunter himself.
There was man and his technology and destruction and greed and everything summed up in such a crystal clear image. And there was all the beauty and wildness and freedom and endurance of nature summed up in another beautiful image. And while all these beautiful images and horrible images were going on, I started crying. And then the next thing I knew, there was this incredible loud bang. I mean, it went off just like a firecracker. It was over within a second. There was just a puff of smoke, and then there was a thrashing whale in the water. And we decided to get out of there fast because we'd been warned that the bull whale might attack in a situation like that. And in fact, he did, but he went right past us, looked at us as he went by, and it was clear that he understood that we weren't the enemy. Went right past us, went up to the front of the harpoon boat, and just came surging out of the water twice, snapping, trying to get at the man who had the harpoon, and the man with the harpoon just reloaded, aimed it down, fired it right in his face, and he went down, and that was the end of it.
The following year, the protest is renewed. In mid-Pacific, Greenpeace locates the same Soviet fleet, dominated by the 597-foot factory ship Dalny Vostok. In 1962, the peak of industrial whaling, more than 24 gigantic factory ships like this scoured the oceans. Each could dismember and process a large whale within an hour. In just 3 years, such methods resulted in the death of more whales than in the peak 25 years of Yankee whales. Again, the tactic is to maneuver the small boats between whale and harpoon, a nerve-wracking game of bluff and maneuver. But after a few skirmishes, the whalers, suddenly and surprisingly, relent.
They were right on top of a pod of whales and closing in on them fast, and when we caught up with them, we got right in front, and the thing went on for a little while, and they swiveled the cannon around, and then finally I guess they got an order from somewhere, and they stopped. click the harpoon up and put the pins in and shut her down. And they've been sitting here ever since. They tried to start up again a couple of times, and then we got back in front of them and they stopped again. So they're stopped at the moment. We'll see what happens from here.
In a strange interlude, a truce is tacitly observed. The hunt stops. Strangers meet in mid-ocean. They take photographs. Some wave and smile.
Thank you.
Protest and political pressures against whaling will continue. And the rust-stained Soviet vessels testify that industrial whaling is becoming uneconomic as well as unpopular. It is possible that industrial whaling will come to an end within a few years. If it is not ended or severely controlled, few scientists could be optimistic about the survival of many of the great whales. In San Ignacio Lagoon on the west coast of Mexico, one may glimpse the more tranquil future all whales could someday enjoy. After being almost wiped out twice before receiving protection from whaling, the California gray whale has made a slow but steady comeback. Now scientists, like Steve Swartz and Mary Lou Jones, pursue the grays, counting their replenished numbers and observing their behavior in the lagoon.
It was traveling south. 10 o'clock.
The Swartz study began routinely, a tedious experience familiar to everyone who has tried to get close to such inaccessible and elusive animals. But then, in February 1977, something happened. Something so remarkable it seemed almost like a dream. The tables were suddenly turned. It was the whales that were investigating the scientists.
Right underneath you.
Swartz and his companions felt almost numb with astonishment as the whales grew bolder and came closer.
Uh-oh, there you go.
Right underneath you again.
It was really all I could do to see enough in the short amount of time that these first incidents took place. After spending years of watching whales at a distance and going out of my way to try and approach them and get close to them to take a picture or just to take a glimpse of what they were doing, here was a whale coming to me. So that was exciting. At the same time, it's not that often that I'm around such a large animal. So there was fear that here's this immense creature showing some sort of interest in the fact that we were there.
The amazing thing about the first touch of the gray whale was the aliveness of the texture of the skin. The whale was, to my estimate, about 35 feet long, and yet the light touch of my fingertips sent a quiver along its entire length. And I think she was just as surprised as I was at the touch.
As time passed, the whales seemed to take increasing delight in blowing bubbles, bumping the boats, and drenching the camera lens. Soon, human apprehension gave way to a kind of joyous excitement, although the whales weighed 25 tons at least and could easily have caused disaster.
Oh. Hold on. It's going to start to get rough.
Here it comes. He's coming over.
It is too soon to know the meaning of this incident, and dozens more like it that have been recorded in San Ignacio. But if our war against whales does come to an end, the future could hold fascinating possibilities. For in the universal language of behavior, both trust and communication often begin with a simple gesture: the touch.
What do you do when 1,200 pounds of hungry animal come knocking at your door? Get yourself a strong door and get ready, because every year he shows up, migrating through the hostile north, uninvited and hungry. And every year, a small Arctic town plays reluctant host to one of the world's largest and deadliest carnivores.
I wake up at nighttime and I can hear the whack, and they're just pounding. It's really loud pounding.
Witness the face-off between man and beast and the efforts of science to save them from each other. Join National Geographic for The Polar Bear Alert. Welcome to the new age of science, of industry, of the imagination. Tomorrow is here at last, at our fingertips. The computer chip has brought us the promise of infinite possibilities in education, in exploration, in all walks of life.
Excuse me.
Join National Geographic on the threshold of the future. Miniature miracle, the computer chip. Whipped by the winds, scorched by a blistering sun. In the onslaught of bitter conditions, life emerges, struggles, and flourishes. They are the creatures of the desert, a wildlife community like no other on Earth. Here, against this timeless backdrop, science has ventured, defying the elements and the odds. Journey with National Geographic to the land where life takes root in sand. Experience the drama of survival among the creatures of the Namib Desert.
National Geographic Video. Undeniably collectible and affordably priced. Only from Vestron Video.